by Primal Space, and it's called The Crazy Engineering of Venice. It's something I never really thought of. Yeah, like how does it actually work, right? Venice is obviously a pretty unique city, with water and the situation. So, we know it's been built like such an eternity ago. How did they ever like back then go about building like this visual like foundation underwater? Like how did they ever do that back then? Um, I do wonder, yeah. So let's see what they say. Let's check it out.
The year is 452. The Roman Empire is on the brink of collapse, and the Huns have just launched their attack on northern Italy.
Yes.
Several cities are completely destroyed, forcing the locals to go on the run. They head for a lagoon just off the coast and take...
Again, yeah, we watched that awesome full history of Venice from Epic History TV. I guess this recaps a little bit of it.
Take refuge on several small islands, a decision that would no doubt save their lives. Against all odds, this small civilization eventually went on to build one of the most impressive feats of engineering the world has ever seen, Venice. Despite having no roads, no land, and no fresh water, the Venetians managed to turn a muddy swamp into the most powerful and wealthiest city of its time. This unique layout of canals and bridges woven through hundreds of islands made Venice incredibly accessible.
And the fact that, I mean, I don't really know too much about Venice in depth, but as far as I know, nothing really has collapsed so far. Though I know the water is rising, in the world, the global warming and all that. So that's been like a threat for it. As far as like, any of this old foundation collapsing, as far as I know, it doesn't happen. But I do wonder if like, there's been like a project to, over the hundreds of years to like try to like repair or like maintain it, or is it just held like this for all this time because it's so well built?
It became the epicenter of all business. We modeled the entire thing to show you what's going on beneath the surface and how its clever design and medieval engineering allowed it to take over the world. When the first refugees arrived to start their new lives on the islands, they had the worst possible surface to build on. The small marshy islands were made of an incredibly soft clay, which would barely hold the weight of a human, let alone an entire city.
How would anyone have the idea of like, yeah, we're gonna build something on this? It's insane.
Create stable foundations for buildings, the Venetians collected large timber piles from the forests of Croatia and started hammering them into the ground. They drove them about 5 meters deep until they reached a much harder layer of clay. Not only did this stabilize the piles, but by packing them really close together, it compressed the surrounding clay, pushing out the water and making it much stronger. Once the piles were firmly in the ground, the tops were cut off and wooden planks were laid on top to spread the load.
But the amount, for like even the tiniest of surface, the amount of work, like just for like a 5-meter surface, you probably need like 20 logs or something. No, maybe a bit less, but even then, you have to cut them, bring them, and then manage to like get them 5 meters into the ground. That's insane. I mean, obviously it reminds me of the pyramid, right? Like people say to this day, it's insane that back then, so long ago, they were able to figure out a way to make it happen, to build the pyramids. And this is that kind of engineering right here. Like, it's like, I understand they had no choice there to run from, a lot of problems, but I feel like, most people would run onto the islands, be like, yeah, we're going to survive here for a little bit, but then just never think of even trying to build anything on here.
Special blocks of Istrian stone were then placed to raise the foundations above the water. This design was a stroke of genius, as the wooden piles were sealed away from the air, making it impossible for them to rot. To this day, almost all of the original piles are in great condition and are still holding up the city.
So the wood, has not rotted or anything for like, decades and decades and hundreds of years and hundreds of years. Okay.
Once the foundation had been properly laid down, the buildings themselves were built. Venetians started off using wood for their houses, but after numerous fires, they switched to brick. To keep the buildings as lightweight as possible, they had to be no more than 3 stories high. Lime mortar had to be used instead of cement because it was flexible and would allow the entire building to flex as the ground beneath slowly moved. The inner
It's kind of like earthquake prevention even back then.
walls were built in a crisscross pattern that would also flex like a trellis.
Damn.
The facade walls, which had large windows and elegant stone designs, made them much heavier. And so in order to stop them from falling over, they were pinned into the floor using iron rods, keeping the entire building together.
Bro,
This method
insane.
of building worked well for the Venetians, and soon several islands around the lagoon were established in this way. Instead of expanding outwards like most cities,
Genius.
these islands expanded into each other. At first, boats were the only way to cross between the islands, but eventually the islands grew closer together, and many could be crossed by simply wading through the shallow water on a horse. The next step in Venice's evolution would, of course, be connecting the islands. Surprisingly, there were no bridges for the first 500 years of Venice's existence.
Really?
But as the population increased and business started to ramp up,
Like, they have the mindset and madness to build all this, but then they're like, no bridge for 500 years. Like, it's not important enough. Like, they think of the craziest way to make this work, but no bridge. Okay. I mean, you know, it's kind of like when you do like the VR task, but you're too bored to do the easy thing, right? Like a bridge is too boring. You know, the engineer just was interested in building the art thing.
it to be an easier way to reach Rialto, the financial center of Venice. And so the Doge of Venice set up a prize for the engineer that could design the best bridge. He announced this by putting up Displate posters all around the city. Just kidding. Displate, today's sponsor, makes awesome metal posters that can be easily mounted using their custom magnet mounting system. They have over 2 million pieces of artwork available, whether it's a beautiful Venice painting or an official poster from collaborators like NASA, Star Wars, Call of Duty, or Netflix. My personal favorites are this Venice poster, Call of Duty.
I was gonna say, I used to have like the second like character in the middle, right? I used to have when I was younger, like 10 years ago or more, a Call of Duty sweater. I think I was offered that for a birthday or Christmas, maybe 2011, 12, 13, somewhere around there. But I wore it once or twice at school, and then I was like too embarrassed to wear it, so I never wore it.
Or Netflix. My personal favorites are this Venice poster and this awesome James Webb design. With their magnet mounting system, you can mount a display in just 20 seconds, without power tools and without damaging the walls. Displate now offers these new texture posters, which bring the artwork to life with awesome 3D textures shaped into the metal itself. This premium finish is already available on hundreds of top-selling Displates. Displate offers ultra-fast shipping, and your metal poster should be at your door in just 4 to 5 days.
Yeah, my brother has like
your collection today.
He's into Panda stuff, so he has a Panda display.
Primal Space, or use code Primal Space. In order to turn Venice from a collection of islands into a bustling city, bridges had to be built. The first attempt was a simple pontoon bridge that joined the two largest sections of Venice together, and crucially, provided quick access to the Rialto area. The bridge was later upgraded to a wooden bridge, which eventually burned down and collapsed before it was finally replaced.
When they learned the lesson, like, they learned the lesson, but then they forget the lesson 500 years, I mean. The thing about this story always repeating itself, right?
By a much stronger stone bridge. To build it, over 12,000 timber piles were driven into the banks of the canal,
so they're still using that metal.
10,000 tons of stone were built on top to form the bridge.
Damn.
To this day, the bridge still stands, and it serves as the main artery in the center of Venice.
I don't understand why, again, the wood is not rotting or deteriorating in any kind of way after so long, right? Like, he's saying that they're not taking care of it, nothing is being done, it just works. I don't understand how wood can last so many hundreds of years and just be fine. I don't know.
After this, stone bridges started to pop up everywhere, turning Venice into a compact city made up entirely of canals instead of roads. This gave Venice a unique advantage, since the canals allowed goods and traffic to flow quickly through every part of the city. The messy overlap of pedestrians and horse-drawn traffic didn't exist in Venice, since the walkways and canals were completely separated. Yet people could transition between the two effortlessly without slowing down. By now, the city had become the most powerful and richest city in Europe. Everything being bought and sold went through Venice, and the Venetians were making enormous amounts of money.
Yeah.
But as business increased, so did the population, and the demand for fresh water was out of control. Despite being surrounded by water, Venice couldn't use any of it, since it was extremely salty and undrinkable. Without natural springs or rivers to collect...
Is it not possible to boil it? I mean, I guess, you know, for that many people, it's probably not very efficient, but is it like the water is so bad you can't even boil it to, like, make it drinkable?
Fresh water, Venice relied upon boats to deliver water from the mainland. But with 170,000 people, the demand became too much.
That's a lot of water
Venetian
bottles.
engineers had to get creative. From the beginning, Venetian islands were built around squares, which were initially just empty fields for animals to graze upon. The idea was to use these squares to collect rainwater.
I mean, it depends on what, right? Like, yeah, some old building, cement, yeah. As I say, like, it depends on what type of building, right? But yeah, like, when you look at wooden building, most wooden building don't last a few hundred years. But yeah, stone building with cement and stuff like that, or concrete, or all that to make sure they hold. That makes some sense, yeah. Yeah.
Started by digging out large areas under the entire square and lining the walls with a thick layer of clay to make it waterproof. The space was then filled in with sand and stones, and the surface was redone with tiles that would lead the water towards each corner of the square. From here, rainwater would flow into the basin and gradually filter through the sand and stones until it reached the main well at the center of the square. To maximize the surface area for water collection, the roofs of the nearby buildings were fitted with gutters that would direct the water onto the square and into the drains. Venice then became an enormous funnel, which filled more than 600 wells around the city. The Venetian...
Wait, so I guess rainwater is not that bad, but so sand acts as a filter for rainwater? So you can just drink it like that? Okay. I mean, that's insane. That's so freaking smart. Like, this is really like insane how, you know, they already built all the space and everything. And you'd think, you know, they have no solution for the water, like what they're gonna do, but no, they still find a solution like this. I mean, you know, obviously Venice is well known for like having some of the biggest thinker and artists and stuff like that, but that's a great showcase of it. I mean, from the beginning to build it, to finding a solution like this, I mean, it is insane. Old cement as limestone, which makes it more durable and less cracking. So why do we have worse cement now?
Had once again engineered a masterpiece to save its city. But there was still one huge problem: waste. Until this point, people threw all of their waste out of the window.
Okay, I guess that explains it. I didn't think of that too, but yeah, that explains why you wouldn't, like, even if you boil it, I wouldn't drink that water, because all of the, you know, the trash is probably in it, and then people's, you know, body fluid, I guess. Yeah, that sounds absolutely terrible. Although, like, how bad the smell was, because it had to be absolutely terrible, right? Like, the whole city had to smell like just death.
Some of it landing in the canal. But for those who didn't live within throwing distance of a canal, urine, feces, and rotten food all ended up in the streets. And so, in the 16th century, the Venetians started building a network of underground tunnels that would collect the waste from every building flush it into the canal. When the tide of the lagoon was down, solid waste would collect at the bottom, and the liquids would naturally flow into the canals. Then, when the tide rose, it would flood the tunnels and pull the solid waste into the canal. The motion of the tide coming in and out twice a day.
So the solution was still to have everything go into the water. I guess there's no better solution, but that's insane. So from the way he showed it, it was like a super small space. So did they send freaking children? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at the time, but like children to like slowly dig under and make those like small... Damn, that's insane. Okay. I mean, I'm impressed by a lot of this, but it's also, you know, crazy to think of even the logistic of it, yeah. Imagine our situation if it floods.
Would exchange the dirty water for fresh water from the sea, flushing Venice from all of its waste. The extremely salty water worked as a strong disinfectant, and thanks to this system, the streets became clean. Amazingly, almost all of the incredible engineering that made Venice is still around today.
That's insane.
The bridges, the canals, the buildings are all ancient relics sitting on a forest that has held up the entire city for over 1,000 years. And now, time for the Primal Space giveaway.
Ow.
The winner of the previous giveaway is Leon. Congrats. In the next video, we'll be giving away this Primal Space designed Venice poster. All you need to do.
I thought that. Man, that was insane. I mean, I kind of wish there was a bit more detail of, you know, explanation of like, you know, science maybe. Of like, for example, yeah, like why, how can it hold for so long when it's just all laying on wood? You know, but nonetheless, it is insane. I mean, I never thought about it, but when you think of like some of the craziest engineering projects of all time, pyramids is one of them, obviously. And even though it's much more recent, I mean, a couple thousand years after the pyramids, Venice is insane. I mean, I didn't realize it was like this. I never thought about it. I never thought like, how is Venice actually built or something? I never realized it was like in marshland in the middle of like a lake, basically, or like, yeah, somewhat a lake, if you will. It's absolutely insane that people from like 1,000, 600 years ago, whatever it was, were able to even think like that. The most impressive thing was like not only like building the wood, then the stone, but then the house on top of it, like the way they were made to be able to, what today you would call like earthquake logic, like building that are made to sway with an earthquake almost. And I guess it wasn't really for earthquake, but for just the tide and maybe everything kind of moving a little bit. But it's insane. Yeah, I'm just impressed very much by the engineering, and it's amazing. Here's a link. Incredible video. I love this. I'm sure there's like so many more videos I could watch about like crazy engineering in Venice. This is crazy. Super interesting video. Yeah. I mean, yeah, just I'm floored by the technology.